Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Bolz, tweeted this morning, "Democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup." So this is a 19-year-old high school graduate who has used the unfortunate nickname Big Balls online, so that would be one way that we could refer to him. He is now working at Musk's behest inside Doge. And we looked into his background. And so we found, several notable things, Aaron, one of which is that this individual has founded multiple companies, including one with another unfortunate name, Tesla.Sexy LLC, which he established in 2021. He would have been around 16 years old. Now, this LLC controls dozens of web domains.
So, Kara, you hear this, and you have known Elon Musk for years. So now you look at these young men who are now in data and in the private information about maybe hundreds of millions of American citizens as young as 19, the big balls here that Katie's talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Oh, man.
One big balls here. Yeah. That second lady, I swear, like her voice kind of cracked, but not like in a ha-ha way, like she was gonna have a moment, you know. Jesus. Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by the number one producer in late night. It's Dave Willimowski. Dave, how are you doing?
Hi guys. I'm doing good. I'm tired. It's been a long week already, but I'm ready to go now. Love this show.
Yeah, it has been a long week. I think the only thing that has gotten me through the first half of this week is the Chiefs losing the Super Bowl.
Oh,
yeah,
man, that was something.
And they didn't just lose; they lost because of how bad Patrick Mahomes was. Like, can you believe it?
He got
just
manhandled.
It feels so good to say that. It's great though. I swear to God, everywhere I went where anyone talked about the game at all, everyone was so happy that everyone was just coming together about it. It was like after 9/11. It felt so good.
It was.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Topping tonight's stories, former First Lady Hillary Clinton is back in the news. She's back in the news tonight after blaming the recent airplane crashes on MAGA. This is what she had to say. U.S. Airlines had gone 16 years without fatal crashes. Then MAGA fired the FAA chief. MAGA, they did it. They fired the FAA chief.
They did it.
Gutted the Aviation Security Advisory Committee and threatened air traffic controllers with layoffs. Now there have been 2 fatal crashes. Hope your unvetted 22-year-olds fix things fast. Well, you know what? No, Dave. Credit where credit is due for Mrs. Clinton on this one, because she knows a thing or two about the dangers of unvetted 22-year-olds.
Oh.
Yeah, right?
Oh.
We made a Monica Lewinsky joke on the show. We're now on a real late night show. We've made it. This is it.
We did it.
We've arrived. It only took us 342 shows. Yeah. Oh my God. And all the people that watch the show that are like under 30 are like, who are those people?
Oh, yeah.
Oops. Yeah. Former Patriots head coach Bill Belichick, now current UNC college football coach Bill Belichick, he made headlines this week. He was out strutting the red carpet at the NFL honors ceremony in New Orleans with his new girlfriend, 24-year-old Jordan Hudson.
Whoa. That's weird.
I bet he vetted her. But the party didn't end there, folks. Check out this footage of the happy couple from later that evening.
Wow.
Boy, so, it do be like that sometimes, though, doesn't it, Dave?
It do be.
All right. In other news, sorry. In other news, the Trump administration announced that the entirety of the classified JFK files would be released to the public, tapping Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna to head the team charged with combing through the documents. Now, onlookers wait with bated breath to find out answers to such questions as, were there multiple shooters? Was it an inside job? And also, does Congresswoman Luna have an OnlyFans?
Oh my.
Yeah, he tapped her for the position, you know what I mean? Yeah, she's
out here for a minute. Hold on.
Yeah, she's going to head the team.
Oh.
Yeah, she is. Remember when I did that poll? I think it's been a couple of years ago now. Remember when I did that poll of like, would you? And it was 3 different female congresswomen. It was like this one, this one, this one. And then the 4th answer was just yes. I think she's the new front runner.
Yeah, she is.
On there. Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely. But I think she's like 35 or 36, something like that. She's only like 4 years younger. She's almost dead. It's almost In 4 years, she won't even exist. And finally, this evening, also President Trump made waves this week when he said the U.S. plans to take over the Gaza Strip and turn it into a Middle Eastern luxury resort destination. Now, critics panned the idea and being anything but American first. But the bigger question is, who exactly are the advisors around President Trump who could have possibly put him up to such a harebrained idea?
What?
Guys, don't forget to don't forget to get your tickets to the 7th annual It's Too Late live show happening Saturday, May 17th. Here in beautiful Columbia, Tennessee. There's going to be sloths, there's going to be lemurs. They got another kangaroo. They just, if you want to hold a baby kangaroo and then the kangaroos get too big and they want to go 12 rounds with you, so they got to get another baby kangaroo. So they got another baby. Yeah, they got a little girl baby kangaroo now. Aww. But they have to keep her literally all the way on the other side of the farm, or the boys will burn the whole place to the ground.
Oh, dig it. All right.
Yeah. I actually went out there the other day and I saw the new outdoor enclosure for all the boy kangaroos that were the babies that you saw, but now they're out there. They're getting I bet they're up to here on you now, Dave.
That's scary right there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting to be swole. Just FYI. So get your tickets to the 7th annual It's Too Late live show. It's such a great time, isn't it?
It is. You get to see your friends.
Yeah, all of our friends are there. No, people don't even talk about politics. We just mostly talk about, guess violent politics. But but food. Oh my God, there's so much good food. You got Ponchos, you got Waffle House. It blows my mind that people in other parts of the country don't have Waffle Houses.
Yeah.
Sad,
really.
Yeah. How do you even grease your arteries? You got to keep the blood. Yeah. You got to be slick,
Keeps it going. Keeps it flowing.
Also, please consider becoming a monthly supporting member of Alan Mosley TV so that we can bring you such riveting content as Bill Belichick and his beautiful young girlfriend and whatever else we did tonight. Over there in the link, down in the show notes, over in chat. But until then, we'll be back with the meme of the week and the viewer mail right after this commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm out of fortune cookies.
Oh, no.
I haven't actually been to our place here in a long time. So that's why I'm out, because I stockpile them and now they're gone. Yeah.
Stupid diet.
God, I know. Somebody told me the other day that they were grabbing a pizza and I was like, oh my God, I didn't. That's a food that I didn't have before I started the diet. Like, it had already been a while since I'd had pizza. Yeah. Now it's been a really long time since I've had pizza.
Yeah.
Just, Jesus.
That pizza's gross. It's fine.
Well, but I'm gross, you know? Hey, Dave.
Yes, Alan.
What time is it?
It's time for meme of the week. Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah. If you know, you know. Yep. How are we? Oh my God, we're actually doing amazing on time. Holy
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like the best show we've done this whole year, which I know it's early, but come on. January was rough, let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? Let's answer the viewer mail. This is so serious. We got to do the same graphic, but with like some cute,
Yeah. Something upbeat.
cute music. Clay Davis writes, Clay, you better be coming to the live event, Clay. If you can hear my voice right now, or if you're in chat, you better be, because Clay, this might be, you see that clock back there? This might,
Yeah.
so you better come to the event. Clay Davis writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what kind of retard leaves the faucet running while they brush their teeth, and why? Ooh.
Wow.
Dave, do you or anyone you know leave the faucet running while they're brushing their teeth?
Yeah, I'm that kind of retard. I don't know. I don't feel like turning it off, turn it back on, turn it off, turn it back on. Yeah. I mean, I work at a shop and I watch like thousands of gallons of water just get dumped down the drain every day, and I'm like, my faucet ain't making an impact. I'm not too worried about it.
You're not paying for one of those though.
Oh. I didn't think about it that way. Costing me money.
Or if they weren't doing that at work, you'd get paid more. That's something else to think about.
I doubt it.
You know what? I will play devil's advocate and say that if you're like me and you have sensitive teeth, the temperature of the water has has to be just. And so if I turn the faucet off and turn it back on, it's going to be all just,
Yeah, you're gonna waste all kinds of water just getting the right temperature.
Yeah, I've already, got out the clipboard and I'm going through my notes so that I can turn the knobs to the exact diameter to have the right temperature. I'm not going to do that all over again, just saying. Plus, I think if you're I think in like your utility bill, like the water is only a small part of it. It's the electricity, really. It's like the big
gas
part of
and electricity.
Yeah. We don't have gas.
Oh.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
we
use
don't
a lot
get
of gas
feet
here.
of snow around here, so I don't need gas. I did live in a house here though that did have gas. My first house I ever bought, I had natural gas. So it's not that they don't exist here. It's just I don't have that now.
You just don't use it. Yeah.
I do miss it though. I had one of those little faux fireplaces that was a little gas. Oh, it felt
nice.
so good. Oh yeah,
those are cozy.
Yeah, you'd back your legs up to that, and even though it's literally cooking your flesh, you would just just stay.
Goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I feel like we've given Clay more than he bargained for with this answer.
Yeah.
But all right. Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Dave, if you abort a cow, is she decaffeinated?
Oh.
Andrew better also be coming to the show, considering the.
Yeah.
I can't see. Like, am I pointing at it?
Yeah.
There.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. Jesus, my hair. Oh my God, I forgot to shave.
Do you want to start over?
We might have to bust the wheel out and spin for redo the monologue. see what we can come up with. All right. Josh Wright writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what is something you never go cheap on? Ooh, Dave, what's something you never go cheap on?
I saw that and I'm racking my brain because I go cheap on everything. Like I really couldn't think of anything. So I'm sitting here in our producer studio here. Printer ink. I always get the name brand printer ink because I've been burned too many times on cheap ink leaking into the printer and just causing a mess and it's a waste of money. So I think that's the only thing I could think of.
I'm willing to bet that there are brands that you buy that you wouldn't buy a random knockoff. Like for instance, like if you're like, let's say you're a Coke or a Pepsi drinker and you're really jonesing for a Coke or a Pepsi, you're not going to go get like the great value,
I have store brand cola upstairs right now. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. You're Jew. Jesus. All right. Well, you know what? Keep thinking during the guest segment, and in the finale, let us know if you can think of something that you're like, oh, I gotta have
I'll walk
this.
around the house. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Aaron Kittner writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what is your favorite non-domesticated animal? I think he's just trying to say, other than dog and cat, what is your what's your favorite animal?
Cool. Favorite animal?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was thinking about this one too. I haven't really thought about it in a long time. That's more of a thing you think about when you're younger. You're a kid. What's your favorite animal? And I think back then, it probably still stands to be like a chimpanzee. I think those are cool because they're pretty close to us, which is neat. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with go with the chimp.
They'll rip your balls off and then your face, right?
Oh yeah, I'm well aware. I don't want to hang out with them, but from a distance, safe distance.
Right. Mongoose.
Really?
Yeah,
Mongoose.
like Rin Tin Tiki, remember? Rin Tin Tiki, the mongoose. Yeah, because I mean, like, I'm not saying that like I'm under attack from cobras in my part of the country, but
yeah, they are pretty badass.
Yeah, it's wild. Like
Jeff the mongoose, he's cool.
Yeah, you think about it, it's weird. Like you see those polls of like what animals people think that they could beat in a fight.
Yeah.
Like that, like a mongoose is like the size of this cup, and he can beat animals you can't in a fight. It's just weird. It's just something to consider. All right. If you're putting a team together, get a mongoose.
Yeah. Get one of them.
And finally this evening, Ryan Seifert writes, Dear Alan and Dave, is it okay to live in a totalitarian regime if we agree with the regime?
Yeah. I don't see why not.
I mean, I don't know. I think... Yeah, I mean, the thing is about totalitarian regimes is they're not really asking whether or not you agree.
Yeah.
So
or if you'd rather leave.
Yeah. Because so if you say, is it okay to live in? Like if I say no, are you going to say, oh, well, I'll just head out? They're going to say, no, why don't you just have a seat?
Yeah. We'll get you out of here.
Yeah. Ryan seems like someone that they're going to need to get down into the mines, into those, like when they're exploring a new vein and they need someone to crawl in there and then they get stuck upside down and they just die. Oh. Yeah.
That's horrible.
It's really bad. You don't want to die that way, Ryan. So just anyway, hope that helps. Guys, we're going to be back with Kyle Anzalone of Libertarian Institute and AntiWar.com right after this commercial break. Go away.
Oh, I can't drink tonight. I have work in the morning. Just shut the hell up. I'm tired of hearing people make excuses to not drink. Oh, I don't want to be hungover in the morning. So what? That is tomorrow's problem. It's a Tuesday night, and guess where I'm going? To the liquor store.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Our guest this evening, making his 7th appearance on the show. 7 appearances for 7 years if it's too late. I don't know if that says something more about you or about me. I don't know. But he is the host of the brand new The Kyle Anzalone Show. It's the first name, last name show. Kyle, I'm sure we could have come up with something more clever than that. Kyle Anzalone, welcome back to the show.
Well, I'm really working on my branding here, Alan, and it's the show's fantastic, by the way. I got a producer that helps me behind the scenes, so it's like really flawless. I'm really happy with the product we're putting out there.
Well, that's interesting because I have a producer and he actually hurts us behind the scenes. So, all right. Well, Kyle, before we kind of deep dive into this, I know that you just told me right before the show was starting that you got a little bit of cough, a little bit of sniffles because you have a super carrier literally in the house with you right now. What the hell's going on, Kyle?
That's right. We got a new baby. And so
Aw.
she's fantastic. She's amazing. And she's also sick this week. And that spread it just to everybody else in the house. So I got a little cold. If I'm coughing or something, I apologize. But hopefully I'll get through it. I just re-upped on my meds right before I went on.
All right. So you heard it here. He takes drugs before doing It's Too Late. All right.
Always. That isn't just because I have a cold.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Well, on that note, Kyle, I was telling you before that the last few weeks of the show here, we've done, I wouldn't, we don't even do as much politics these days as we used to do. But, I wouldn't necessarily say that they were pro-Trump shows, but they were more just, I don't even know if they were anti-Kamala Harris shows, because she doesn't exist anymore. She's gone. She's out of the lexicon. But it's more just been I can appreciate when things go right. We actually did a whole episode with our friend Mike Meharry about kind of taking the W's when you can get them, right? Because frankly, let's be honest, people who think the way we think don't exactly get a ton of political W's in the modern world. But there's been a few, and I can appreciate that. So really quick, before we get into why this is going to be the exact opposite episode of that, and we're going to talk about all the reasons why the world is fucked and there's no hope for the future. What do you think about that? Have you had anyone accusing you of being MAGA all of a sudden? You're pro-Trump because you dare to dream that things might actually be somewhat better than if the election had gone the other way?
I don't think I've been called pro-MAGA by anyone. Most of what I cover is foreign policy, so typically I'm very critical of Donald Trump, and I don't have a chance to say this often, but I do wake up every morning and I'm so thankful that Kamala Harris isn't the president of the United States. Not that I want Trump to be the president, but I'm just grateful it's not her. That we have a president that actually somewhat states policy occasionally is beyond important. And Kamala Harris just simply could not do that. She couldn't articulate long-held beliefs. All she could do is speak in broken slogans and then cackles. It was absolutely unbelievable that's who the Democrats put up as their nominee. Somebody who really didn't seem to understand what the American government or policy was at all. Not that I agree with most of the policies that the American government pursues, but it is helpful to have a president. At least when Joe Biden ran against Trump, when Hillary Clinton ran against Trump, those two were the candidates of policy. They were the ones who understood what the establishment was doing in America, and they were able to it was propaganda, but articulate a message to the American people about what that policy was and how it was supposed to help them. When Trump ran against Harris, he was the presidential candidate that was able to articulate policy. She simply couldn't do it. She could barely sit down with an interview and even be asked mildly intense questions. She had to get an interview handheld with her vice presidential candidate with her. And so, not that I support Trump, that I like Trump. It's just that having somebody who is clearly in charge and who has some policies and thoughts of his own, I think is really important in a president. And so at least there's that.
Well, of course, as people famously say all the time, is that's the one thing, right? The president is the commander in chief, and so they're gonna have a lot of sway as it pertains to foreign policy. I think kind of what I'm feeling from you is that if we had a President Harris, then it's not so much that we would see her brand of American foreign policy. We would just get foreign policy from whatever shadowy cabal is behind the scenes that you don't know who's calling the shots. I don't know who's calling the shots. She's just parroting. And it's kind of like, look, I'm not exactly the biggest believer in democracy in the world, but if you're going to elect someone who then basically is going to, hit cruise control and walk away, then you and I have absolutely, we don't even know who to, if you and I wanted to complain, we don't even know who we're complaining to. we don't even know who to complain about. So at least when you have a Trump, you can say, oh, Trump did this one thing I approve of. Good job. I want to say I approve of this. But if he does something you don't approve of, you can say, hey, this was wrong. I don't approve of this. Whereas the alternative is that, well, I don't even know where to send the memo to, right?
Right. Well, and look at what happened during the Biden administration. Of course, again, in 2020, running from his basement, Biden was able to articulate policy and explain, what his thought was, and he had been doing it for 50 years. But once he got into the position of president, it became pretty clear that, yeah, when you don't have a whole lot to do in your life and you just get to sit in the basement all day, that you can go on and give highly choreographed speeches and explain what you think. But when you have to travel around the world, when you have to do the job of a president that requires, I'm sure 20 hours a day of work and learning and then making decisions and things like that, Biden clearly couldn't do it. And so you end up having Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, being completely in charge of American foreign policy. And he's effectively, the New York Times reported this, that he effectively acted as the Secretary of War. He refused to engage in diplomacy with anyone, even American allies, even the Ukrainians, when they had arrested an American journalist, Gonzo Lira, right? Or when we are trying to get them maybe to not nationalize the media, hold elections, to not crack down on the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. All these things we could have pressured the Ukrainians to do, and he was simply incapable of doing it. The only thing that Blinken could do is go around the world, is hand out weapons and encourage war. And then, of course, Americans don't know who the Secretary of State is. And so when they say to themselves, and when you explain this, they say, well, I don't think Biden knows what's going on. Well, they are right about that, but it means there's absolutely no accountability or no understanding of the policy. At least when it's Donald Trump and you say, well, Donald Trump said this, even the Trump supporters are like, well, he did say it. You know what I mean? Like, they actually have to contend with the policy and the results of what Trump did, where Biden got a free ride, and Kamala Harris was too, because, unlike Biden, she doesn't have the excuse of old age for the reason why she's completely inept and completely unable to articulate policy, but nobody expected her to be able to do so or run the government.
Well, since we kind of already brought up diplomacy a little bit, we'll kind of jump to the end and work our way back to the beginning. So the MAGA listeners will get maybe another 90 seconds to be happy before we go in on Trump. So I mentioned right before we started, there was the news, Mark Vogel, that was headlines literally on Twitter right now, right before we're getting started. Freed from Russian detention. He had been arrested and in prison since 2021. He got sentenced to 14 years in a Russian prison because they caught him with like a sixth of an ounce of medicinal marijuana, something like that. Which, of course, as you had already mentioned to me, they don't fool around with drug laws in Russia. So if you're wanting to tour Moscow, maybe leave your weed at home. I'm not trying to victim blame. I'm just saying, maybe leave your weed at home. But it's not so much that I want to talk about him specifically, just as to say, look, he got locked up in 2021. He's just now coming home, a month after the start of the second Trump term. Was that kind of diplomacy during the Biden administration? Were they unable or unwilling to do it? I guess is the question a lot of people have. By the way, both of those are bad. But which is it? Or were they unable to work diplomatically with other countries like a Russia or a China or anyone in South America? Or were they unwilling to?
Unwilling. I mean, we did see some moments, like they did free the WNBA player Brittany Grenier. In similar thing, right? That was over bringing weed into Russia. Yes. And so she was arrested for that and then ultimately freed in a prisoner swap. And so it's not as if, they didn't accomplish these kinds of things in the Biden administration. This isn't necessarily meaningful diplomacy to do a 1-for-1 prisoner exchange, especially when I think for the Biden administration, they looked at it as, well, we have a black woman here, a famous black woman, and the kind of how they ran the progressive ideology. It really made sense for them to free Brittany Grenier as some kind of victory, even though it really didn't address any of the fundamental issues here. So I think what happened is potentially a good thing. I want to really emphasize potentially, though. So Rick Grenell, who's Trump's crisis envoy, traveled to Russia and got this done. Now, during Trump's, I think, second week in office, Rick Grenell also went to Venezuela, and he got 6 Americans. freed from Venezuela. And so it seems like maybe a very similar thing. Now, right after Rick Grenell did this, our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was doing a tour of Latin America. And one of the things that Rubio did is he went to the Dominican Republic, where they were holding Venezuelan plane owned by Nicolas Maduro. And Rubio seized that under claiming it violated U.S. sanctions. And I'm sure from the perspective of Maduro and the Venezuelan government, this is almost worse than not doing the prisoner exchange at all, right? Because now you've tried to do something to get the relationship with the Trump administration started on the right foot. You know, you've taken steps in that direction, and then immediately after you get slapped in the face. And so I think this could be a good sign, but it's really important how the Trump administration follows up from here. And I think there's a real possibility. Look, if you look at essentially anybody else in the Trump administration, maybe minus Rick Grenell and Tulsi Gabbard, anybody on the foreign policy team, they've long believed in providing arms in this proxy war in Ukraine. And so Marco Rubio, Trump's envoy to the conflict, Keith Kellogg, could all really get in the way of what Grenell did here. And I think from the Russian perspective, if this isn't followed up with a goodwill gesture on the American side, or at least a move towards reasonable diplomacy, it doesn't mean that the Trump administration has to go right up front and basically say, we know the Ukrainians have basically lost the war, so let's negotiate from a losing position with the Russians. You know, maybe Trump comes in with a good hand, but if the Americans aren't, say, willing to take NATO membership off the table, they're not willing to understand that Ukraine has lost 4 of its regions that have now been annexed by Russia, and those will never go back, then the Russians may say, well, we did a goodwill gesture here and we got slapped in the face in response. And so this could actually set back negotiations as well. It just depends on how it's followed up here. And so I'm not so convinced that this is going to be a step in the right direction.
Well, I'm always reminded whenever you see this kind of little diplomatic quid pro quo, but in America's case, it's often regimes that are considered to be opponents globally may extend something of an olive branch, and sometimes America will accept it and sometimes America swats it away. And whenever anything like that happens, it always reminds me of that quote that's I don't know if Kissinger actually said it, but it's attributed to him. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. Something along those lines.
Yeah, I do think that is a Kissinger quote.
Okay. But I want to get into a little bit of the news more recently from the Middle East, particularly with Israel and Gaza. So I have a clip for you that I'm going to play right here that sparked a lot of conversation over the last week. I think you already did a show about it, about Trump. Of course, we've Canada's the 51st state, Greenland's the 52nd, Panama is going to be the 53rd, and now, of course, we have Gaza. That's going to be the 54th state. Watch this clip right here.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
I think it's so interesting that he ends that line with the people of the area. He didn't say the Gazans to come back and live in this beautiful resort that he plans on building. He said the people of the area. What did he mean by that, Kyle?
Yeah, so I think he probably means the Jewish people of Israel are going to be the ones to resettle it. I do think maybe Trump has this grand vision where he's going to divide Gaza up between like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Israel, Jordan, and the US, and everybody's going to build like a little resort city in Gaza. I don't think that's really practical. I don't think the Israelis are going to let anyone touch Gaza other than Americans and Israelis. We've heard from very high members of the Israeli government, including the finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, call for the resettlement or the settlement of Gaza by Jews. And so I do think that is the direction that we're going here. And all of Trump's other bluster and rhetoric is just him floating out ideas. And I think in a lot of ways, giving Israel the coverage that they need to go ahead and finish off the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, which I'm sure we'll get into here. Now, I know Trump has said that American forces are not going to be deployed to the Gaza Strip while there's still Palestinians there. And I do think that's correct. I've said throughout the entire 16-month-long conflict, when Americans and others have warned that the U.S. could get directly involved in this war and put boots on the ground, I always thought that was very unlikely, mainly based on the number of war crimes that Israel is committing, that they don't want somebody there who effectively could snitch on them, and who, you know, if you send Americans there, sure. Alan, I recently wrote up an article for the Libertarian Institute, and it was discussing Trump's proposal here. And only 3% of Israeli Jews, 3%, saw the ethnic cleansing of Gaza as immoral. Now, the Israeli population, the Jewish population, is divided on whether it's a practical plan or not, but they all think that they should do it, that they all want to do it. It's just a matter of if it's a good idea or if it's something that could, you know, possibly be completed, or if it's just too much of a pipe dream, because there's, Trump has said in the past week, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 million Palestinians still living in Gaza that would have to be removed. And so I don't think that the Israelis want their American troops deployed there, because the Israeli population is successfully indoctrinated. They're all willing to stand by or participate in obvious murders. Call them war crimes. They're just Palestinians are walking around Gaza and just get their heads blown off by Israeli snipers, not because they crossed any line that they obviously knew about, not because they posed any kind of threat, just because the Israelis saw them and they thought they were a little too close to the Israeli position, so they shot and killed them. And then not only that, they leave the body for the dogs to go after, the wild dogs, I guess, now that exist in running around Gaza, as they were abandoned when October 7th happened. They're feeding on the bodies that Israel's leaving behind. And this is coming from Israeli sources. This isn't something that the Palestinians are saying. This is being reported in Haaretz, in 972 magazine. The Israeli outlets, Israeli soldiers, Israeli journalists are reporting this. They are trying to say, like, hey, there are some very nasty things going on in there. So I don't think the Israelis want American troops on the ground. Now, Alan, I want to point out something else that Trump said about Gaza. He said that there were two things that really made Gaza so dangerous that the Palestinians couldn't remain there. And that was the Hamas tunnels and the unexploded bombs on the ground.
Yeah. But
what Trump is not saying is that is actually a threat to the Israelis, not the Palestinians. Before October 7th, there was questions about how Hamas got their weapons. And about 3 months into the conflict, an IDF report found that 80% of Hamas's weapons were sourced from Israeli dud munitions dropped on Gaza. And so Hamas has gotten tons of extra bombs that they now have access to. If you look at the videos of people returning to northern Gaza, there's just landmines all over the side of the road, unexploded 155 millimeter shells, larger bombs all over the place in Gaza. Hamas is going to take these into their tunnel. They're going to process them into weapons that are going to be used against the invading force. So, God, I really hope that Americans don't end up there, because whoever that invading force is going to continue to take casualties. Israel's had hundreds of soldiers killed in Gaza, hundreds of them. And I'm sure if they continue these operations, it's going to get a lot worse unless they do all aerial bombing campaigns and just really take a huge toll on the civilian population of Gaza. And so I guess that's kind of what I'm looking at here, of what Trump's saying and why he's saying it and what's going to happen.
Well, one thing I do want to address, because a lot of people have said things like, and when I say a lot of people, I mean your MAGA types, the people who are going to support what President Trump is doing. I mean, literally, if he goes 180 degrees against his own campaign promises, it's irrelevant because they're going to support him because that's who they are. Our friend Michael Bolden, who is the founder of the 10th Amendment Center, had said that, a lot of these people are basically saying, oh, Trump doesn't mean that. Trump, when Trump gives an ultimatum, or when Trump says, oh, we're going to come in and we're going to do this and that, or, oh, we're going to go get the bad guys or whatever. He doesn't actually mean those things. It's just a negotiation. That's who he is. He's a businessman. He's a real estate tycoon, and he's just negotiating. And look at the tariffs. Look at all. He threatens this country, he threatens that country, and the next day, what do? They capitulate to his demands. And so he's just a great negotiator. But I wanted to read something that Michael Bolden had written, which was, in negotiations, if everyone knows you're bluffing, then you don't actually have any leverage, because they need to believe that you're willing to follow through, which is just something to keep in mind for those who constantly say that, like, for instance, forcibly removing people from Gaza is just a negotiation tactic. Do you think that all of this is just negotiating tactic, or do you think that this would be the kind of the crossing the Rubicon for the guy that constantly brags, oh, I never started any new wars, I'm a peace president? Is this a serious threat that he would ruin his own announced greatest thing about his presidency?
I think it's a serious threat. The first time Trump said it, I wasn't sure. He has said it repeatedly in different ways, and also kind of extended on that too now, saying that it's not going to be a temporary resettlement of Palestinians. It's going to be a permanent resettlement of Palestinians. Additionally, the Palestinian population is highly educated. It's a 98% literacy rate. There's tons of doctors in Gaza. A lot of people have college degrees. I think in the United States, we assume that Gaza is basically Afghanistan, right? And the Taliban and Hamas are essentially the same. And that's just not true. The Gaza really prioritized education. And so there's no need to displace the Palestinians. They simply need to be able to import the things that they need to rebuild Gaza. There's certainly people there that either have the construction capabilities or could very quickly be trained and learn how to do it. And of course, this will be huge because then the Palestinian people are having incomes. They have jobs, right? Trump's talking about creating all these jobs. Well, let's create some jobs for the Palestinian people. Let's let them live in some dignity with a paycheck, right? But that's not what he's talking about here. And whether Trump realized this at first or not, when he said this, the Israelis said, bet. You know what I mean? They were on it. They said, all right, sure, I like it. We're going to do this. And so even if Trump was bluffing, Netanyahu is not. Netanyahu wants to clean out the Gaza Strip. Look, Netanyahu's goal over the past several decades has been to weaken the entire region so Israel could do what it wants to the Palestinians. And Alan, if you look at the region, it's never going to be weaker or more placated than it is right now. Iraq has been destroyed and now has an American-built government. Syria has been destroyed and now has an al-Qaeda government. Southern Lebanon has been utterly destroyed, and the country is in financial ruins in part because of the system that America forced on there. Somalia is a failed state. Libya is a failed state. Sudan is in the middle of civil war. The Jordans, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris are all bought and paid for. There's, a band of militias that exist in Iraq and Syria who would stand up to Israel. You have Hezbollah in its weakened state that could stand up to Israel. You have the Houthis in Yemen and Iran that could stand up to Israel. But other than that, the region has been completely placated. And again, the Houthi and Hezbollah capabilities are severely limited. And Iran, I think, contends with the fact that if they stand up for the Palestinians here, if they were to go to war with the Israelis for the Palestinians, it could cost them their entire society, right? That Israel has nuclear weapons and they are not afraid to use them. The U.S. has nuclear weapons. I don't think the U.S. would necessarily nuke Iran, but we have a massive military that we would support whatever Israel wants to do in Iran. And if Israel was taking real beating, who knows how far the U.S. would escalate if, say, Israel has already used a nuclear weapon in Iran or something like that. So I think the Iranians probably have real considerations and make real calculations that it may not be worth it for us to do this. It could cost us millions of Iranian lives if we choose to stand up for the Palestinians. And so if Netanyahu wants to create greater Israel, that's southern Lebanon, the Golan in Syria, that's the West Bank, and that's Gaza. There has never been a time like now to do that. And look, I'm not saying this to make the case for Israel to do it, but this is what I was saying in late 2021 and very early 2022. That if you look at if I were advising Vladimir Putin, if I were a Russian general in late 2021, I would have told Putin that there's not going to be a better time. If we wait, the Americans are only going to equip the Ukrainians more. They're only going to treat them more as a NATO proxy force. And so this is just me trying to give the advice that I think Netanyahu's military leaders, the pragmatic, realistic advice that they are giving him is there's never going to be another time like the present to create greater Israel, to take the Strip, to take West Bank, to make Jerusalem, the capital city of Israel. All these things that Israel wants, I think they're just on the verge of doing it. Now, whether it works out for them, I'm not sure, but I do think we're going down this road.
Well, speaking of escalations, I do have one more clip I want to play for you here. So, as a quick backdrop, we know that Hamas has been slowly but surely releasing more and more of the Israeli hostages. Of course, I can't help but note every single time I see a new report of, oh, look at these hostages that were released. Look at these. They look okay. Like, look, I'm not sitting here endorsing what has happened to them or their attackers, and obviously we're not there on the ground. But they're walking out of there on their own two legs and smiling and rejoining their loved ones. So at the very minimum, we can say that they were at least treated at least somewhat humanely, which is more than can be said about some Palestinian detainees that find their way back home when being finally released from Israeli authorities. But I think a lot of people right after Trump's inauguration and the announcement of a ceasefire, I think a lot of your just laymen on the street said, "Oh, good, that's going to be scaling back now." Thank you, President Trump. That the peace president strikes again. But of course, we know that the ceasefire has been tenuous at best. There's been a lot of killing ever since the ceasefire went into effect. But then, in response to the trickle of hostages being released and the potential end of a ceasefire, Trump had this to say right here.
As far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out.
Cancel it, all bets are off, let hell break out. So what exactly is Trump saying for Saturday at 12 o'clock?
Yeah, so Alan, I think it's really important to explain here what has happened over, I guess, like the course of the past year, which is this deal was effectively on the table just a few months after October 7th, probably in December of 2023, early 2024. The exact same deal was on the table in July of 2024, and Netanyahu refused to take it. And so, another 8 months went by. But importantly, what happened during that time, Alan, was the U.S. election. And I think that this has all played out as I predicted, as Netanyahu wanted over the past year, where he kept the war going through the election, because it turns, I didn't think that this was the case on election day, but it turns out there was some polling done, I think by YouGov, where they found that the number one issue for voters who voted for Biden but not Harris was the war in Gaza. And so I really do think that this maybe Harris would have lost anyways, but certainly significantly skewed the election results was Harris not backing down in this war still going on in Gaza through the election day. And so Netanyahu won it with Trump as president. Now, one of the things that Trump has said is that he wants the fighting to be over. And so the day before Trump came into office, there was this ceasefire deal put in place, and it was only put in place because Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, went to the Middle East and told Netanyahu that Donald Trump really wanted this deal done. Now, how that deal worked was there's 3 phases. In the first phase of the deal, Hamas was supposed to release most of the living Israeli hostages. In exchange, Israel was going to release, I think, between like 30 and 50 Palestinian hostages per Israeli hostage released. And if you read the mainstream media, they'll say the Palestinians are releasing, Hamas is releasing hostages, and the Israelis are releasing prisoners. A lot of the people Israel is releasing are not prisoners. They really are hostages. They're detainees. They're people that have committed supposed criminal, political crimes, but most of them are not actual criminals. Now, there are some people who have engaged in hostilities against Israel who I think maybe are better classified as like prisoners of war than actual criminals. And it's important to note that a lot of the hostages that Hamas is now releasing, I think, would also be better classified as prisoners of war. These were members of the IDF who were in IDF uniform on October 7th who were captured by Hamas. And I think they were treated as prisoners of war by Hamas, where the latest round of the 3 male Israeli hostages that were released were in pretty rough shape. They looked like they had not eaten very well in quite some time. However, the people of Gaza are starving to death, and so it's not exactly clear to me that the Israeli detainees were eating severely more poorly than the average Palestinian in the Strip. And if you look at the female hostages released, they look like they had maintained most of their body weight and were fairly well kept. And as you mentioned, the Palestinians who are being released, some of them are being sent immediately to the hospital because they were beaten so severely by the Israelis upon their release. And so, that's one discrepancy here. But what Donald Trump is actually doing, and what he did in that clip, is he said, screw everything else I have said. Screw the deal that my Middle East envoy negotiated between Hamas and Israel that was agreed to by Netanyahu and Hamas. And now I say that Hamas must release all the hostages on Saturday, and if not, Israel could go back to war. And so what Trump effectively did is just gave Israel a green light to go back to war, because Hamas isn't going to just give up all the hostages right away. The hostages were, slowly released as a part of this 3-phase deal. And now Israel is effectively only going to agree to go through with about the first 4 weeks of the first phase, which was supposed to be 6 weeks. Because I do expect that maybe even by the time that this episode is out, Alan, that Israel will again be bombing the Strip.
Well, we're running short on time, but I guess I'll ask you that question right there just to kind of hammer this point home. So if at least I know it's a grim situation, but if at least some inroads have been made, if there was at least a deal in place, look, at the end of the day, Kyle, I don't care who gets credit for what. I'm one of those people that's like, look, I just want to see people not getting killed. So look, if the Trump team can take a victory lap because he gets elected and the next day there's a ceasefire, I don't care. But with that said, as you've described, it's that, like, look, the work that had been done, the plan that was put in place, albeit one that had been sitting on the shelf for a long time, is in that first phase. And now all of a sudden it's, well, we're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and go back to killing people. What changed, or specifically, who around Trump had planted the bug in his ear, whether it was this past week or the week before, or even before that, we don't know, that suddenly made him, or at least I shouldn't really say the administration take such a different path?
Yeah, so I guess I would point to two factors, and I base this in part on Trump's first administration, because I do think he's governing very differently than he did in his first administration, but I think a lot of his decision making and his actions seem very similar to me. So if we look at his first administration, one thing that moved Donald Trump was violence against children. And so during his first administration, Donald Trump ran on, and when he first came into office in 2017, he was open to engaging with the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad. He saw that Damascus was standing against the Islamic State and al-Qaeda, and thought that it would be good to shift away from the Obama era policy of supporting the terrorists for the in order to take down Assad and back Assad, or maybe not back Assad, but certainly not attack Assad and not harm the Syrian state in order to help the Syrian state deal with the terrorists, and maybe even work with the Russians who are backing Assad in Syria to go after the terrorists. And then what happened in April of 2027, there was a false flag, we now know is a false flag, chemical weapons attack in Syria. And Ivanka, I believe it was Ivanka, showed Donald Trump pictures of supposed victims who were she said were killed in this attack, and that they were children. And this apparently moved Donald Trump to launch an attack on Bashar al-Assad, and there went any hopes of the United States shifting away from the policy of backing terrorists in Syria to at least not going after Bashar al-Assad. And this time, right before Netanyahu met with Donald Trump, one of the things they did is they showed him the not January 6th, October 7th film, where the Israelis present all of these narratives. So Hamas committed atrocities on October 7th. They killed innocent people. They shot and killed innocent people, including a baby who was in their car seat, and absolutely horrifying. Other things are not true. There wasn't a mass rape. There wasn't beheaded babies. There wasn't even 40 babies killed on October 7th. I think there was just one child, that you would classify as a baby, not a toddler, who was killed on October 7th. But they had this propaganda film that really plays up the Hamas atrocities and doesn't talk about the Hannibal Directive, where Israel ordered its military to attack buildings and cars that were had Hamas fighters in them, yes, but also had Israeli civilians that were kidnapped by Hamas, and Israel killed all of them. And of course, they don't mention again this in that film. And so I think that film probably moved Donald Trump. The other thing we saw in the first Trump administration was that while he had envoys in the Middle East and other officials who were supposed to be working for him, he seemed to rely largely on the views of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is very pro-Israel, who really shares Netanyahu's vision. His family has invested in settlement expansion in, I think, East Jerusalem, not even the West Bank. So Jared Kushner is a real ideologue here. And this is something that Kushner had said in 2024, basically that Gaza should be taken away from the Palestinians and we should build a bunch of resorts. And that's what Trump ended up saying with Netanyahu. We're going to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. Or I think Mike Waltz, his national security advisor, said, the Beirut from the Middle East, or the Paris of the Middle East, something like this. And so I think that that's kind of what we're seeing Donald Trump's decision-making change. And also during his first administration, he was very willing to go along with Netanyahu. So he recognized the annexation of the Golan Heights. He recognized or moved the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, effectively recognizing the capital of Israel as Jerusalem. And in a sense, Alan, that these are, I don't want to say practical steps, but steps that reflect the reality of the ground. Israel was never going to give the Golan Heights back to Syria, and for the decades to come, Syria won't be in the position to take the Golan Heights back from Israel. Jerusalem was treated by Tel Aviv as the capital of Israel, and so the U.S. doing it too is just going along with that policy. And so I think here, in a sense, Biden had always had this fanciful idea that the Arab states were just going to agree to normalize with Israel and rebuild Gaza, and the Palestinians were going to live there again like none of the past year ever happened. Of course, that was impossible and wasn't going to happen because the Israelis were never going to allow it to happen. So I think in part what Trump is doing here is recognizing the situation on the ground, which is Israel is going to cleanse the Palestinians from Gaza. Now, Trump or Biden could have stood up to Netanyahu to prevent this, but that's never going to happen either.
Well, on that note, I hope the next time we talk, that maybe our predictions are incorrect and things will work out better. But at a bare minimum, I hope America has little to nothing to do with it. Kyle, where can people go to support you and check out your new show?
The best place to go to follow all my work is my Twitter handle at @KyleAnzalone_. The new show is the Kyle Anzalone Show. You can subscribe to that on Twitter. And of course, I am the news editor at the Libertarian Institute, so I write news articles for that site every day. The occasional op-ed. My other podcast, Conflicts of Interest, is hosted through the Institute, and I am the opinion editor at antiwar.com. So you check out the Viewpoint section, the Spotlight article every day. Those are the ones I set for antiwar.com.
Well, Kyle, on that note, we're going to get you out of here on this one. Are you ready for the bonus round?
Yes.
All right. I want you close your eyes. I want you to visualize this that I'm about to describe. So imagine you have a plate and you've got lettuce, you've got tomatoes, maybe you've got some peppers and onions, maybe you got some cheese on there, maybe you've got some carbohydrate, mixed in, maybe even some protein. You thinking like your bacon bits and your croutons, that sort of thing. Are nachos a salad?
They are not. The amount of lettuce has to outweigh the number of chips, or that's what distinguishes a salad and nachos.
Oh, sorry once again, Kyle. Of course, as viewers of It's Too Late know, nachos are in fact a salad. I am a registered dietitian. Everyone who's wanting to get fit for the new year, head out to your local Mexican place and get yourself a nacho salad. Kyle, we'll try again next time.
I'm pretty sure I'm 0 for 7, so that might be the worst record of any of your guests. So I guess you gotta keep having me back on till I get one of these at least.
You know what? You're on. We'll do it. All right, guys, we will be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Don't go away. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you get us on our favorite podcasting platform of choice thanks to Spotify. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. Don't forget to get your tickets to the 7th annual It's Too Late live show coming to you Saturday, May 17th in beautiful Columbia, Tennessee.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, get zipped up. Yeah.
It's getting cold down here.
Is it? What's the temperature up there?
Yeah. It's, I think, upper 20s, lower 30s.
Oh, okay. All right.
Not too bad.
Now, what are we going to do with ourselves now that football season's over?
Nothing good.
No, ain't that the truth? Oh, shit. That is true. I think we need to bring back the occasional fun variety game streams that we used to do. Dave and I have had a lot of jobs. We've survived the wastes. We used to defuse bombs.
Oh, that got intense.
Yeah. Dave, do you have a final thought?
That was riveting. I listened to like that whole interview. I think I learned some stuff.
Wow.
What's going on over there? Yeah, it was great. So yeah, awesome listening to Kyle. To you, good questions, good interview. Fun time.
Yeah, that was Kyle's 7th appearance on the show. Imagine coming onto this show, experiencing this, and then saying, "I'll do this 6 more times just to see if that was a fluke."
Results are inconclusive.
Yeah. After party?
Yeah, we can do a quick one.
All right.
Upload
Guys, head over to twitch.tv/AlanMosleyTV. Join us for the after party. But if not, just give us everything that you've got now.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week. You hit the button too early. What the hell are you doing?
I did.
People didn't get to see my wink.
Oh, you know what? We almost nailed it. Almost a perfect show.
Yeah.
I couldn't let that happen.
I hate you. Yeah. It's because you're still too jazzed up from watching American History X. You think you could just do whatever you want now.
Yeah. But using my privilege.
Jesus. I was telling Mary, that I was like, I don't know if this is the right movie for this week. Y'all, you could call an audible and just watch like Dumb and Dumber. It's okay.
That was pretty heavy.
You don't have to watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, now it's way too late with Alan Mosley.